December 24, 1971. The smell of flame-broiled beef and warm sesame buns saturates the frozen Indianapolis air, mixing with exhaust from idling station wagons and the sharp bite of approaching snow. Inside the Burger Chef on West 38th Street, families crowd the red vinyl booths beneath bright orange pendant lights that cast everything in a warm, almost dreamlike glow. Children clutch plastic fun meal boxes, their small fingers tracing the raised castle logo embossed on cardboard that promises adventure. The castle is tactile, dimensional, inviting touch. It suggests labyrinths of burger-scented corridors, a kingdom where French fries are currency and chocolate shakes flow like rivers through magical landscapes constructed entirely in childhood imagination. Outside, the distinctive peaked roof, a monument of googie architecture that speaks the visual language of jet-age optimism and American prosperity, glows like a beacon against the winter darkness. Its orange and white panels catch the streetlights, visible from 3 blocks away through bare tree branches, impossible to confuse with anything else in the suburban sprawl of strip malls and gas stations and churches. This is Burger Chef at maximum power, not competing with McDonald's, beating them. In this frozen moment, 1,200 restaurants spread across 45 states like a viral phenomenon, following highway systems and population density maps with the precision of military conquest. Annual revenues kiss $400 million, enough money to purchase small nations or fun space programs or build entire universities. The second largest hamburger chain in America and in crucial markets across the Midwest and South, the dominant player. In Indianapolis, Burger Chef locations outnumber McDonald's 3-1. In Cincinnati, the ratio reaches 4-1. In Louisville, 5-1. Customers choose Burger Chef not reluctantly, not as a backup option when McDonald's is too crowded, but preferentially, deliberately, because the flame-broiled taste is superior and the prices are lower, and the fun meals are creating brand loyalty in children that will theoretically last lifetimes. The numbers tell a story that seems to have only one possible ending: total victory over Ray Kroc's Golden Arches. McDonald's, operating primarily from California and slowly expanding eastward, watches Burger Chef's Midwest and Southern dominance with the kind of careful attention that military strategists pay to superior forces. They're studying every menu item, every operational procedure, every marketing campaign. They're learning, adapting, preparing counterattacks. But tonight, on Christmas Eve 1971, Burger Chef holds the high ground. But this is only the facade, the storefront, the stage set designed to convince audiences that everything is fine, that expansion equals health, that revenue growth masks the operational decay spreading through the corporate structure like cancer through a body that still appears healthy from the outside. 300 miles east in White Plains, New York, inside the executive suites of General Foods Corporation, where men in expensive suits make decisions about products they've never used and customers they've never met, a different calculation is taking place. Spreadsheets display Burger Chef's performance not against McDonald's, but against other General Foods divisions, against Maxwell House Coffee with its comfortable margins and predictable demand, against Jell-O with its minimal capital requirements and simple manufacturing, against Birdseye frozen vegetables with their straightforward distribution and consistent profitability. And in those internal comparisons, Burger Chef is underperforming. Lower margins per dollar of revenue, higher capital requirements for equipment and real estate, more management attention per dollar of profit, more franchisee complaints requiring corporate intervention, more competitive pressure requiring constant strategic response. The restaurant division, despite its impressive revenue, despite its market position, despite its competitive advantages over McDonald's in key regions, is beginning to feel like a distraction from General Foods' core competencies in shelf-stable consumer packaged goods. A clock has already begun its countdown, measuring out the remaining lifespan of an empire built on flame-broiled beef and strategic brilliance, and the belief that innovation and execution could overcome any competitive threat. Because what no one sees between those crowded tables and endless golden fries, what remains hidden beneath quarterly earnings, reports that satisfy Wall Street analysts who measure success in revenue growth rather than operational excellence, is that the heart of the beast has developed an arrhythmia. The decision-makers in White Plains view hamburgers through the same analytical framework they apply to instant coffee. treating perishable restaurant meals as if they possessed the stability and predictability of products sitting on grocery store shelves for months. And in those polished conference rooms where windows overlook suburban office parks rather than restaurant parking lots, where no one has ever worked a Friday dinner rush or dealt with a broken ice machine during brutal July heat or trained a nervous 16-year-old or apologized to an angry customer whose burger arrived cold. Decisions are being made that will prove fatal. Capital allocation, choices that prioritize quarterly dividends to shareholders over equipment upgrades that franchisees desperately need. Marketing budget cuts that save thousands today while sacrificing millions in market share tomorrow. Franchise support reductions that alienate the very people responsible for maintaining brand standards and serving customers with genuine care rather than minimum wage indifference. The castle on the fun meal box, that raised emblem promising wonders to children who believe in magic and kingdoms and the fundamental goodness of cardboard treasure chests, will appear 3 times in this story. First, tonight on Christmas Eve 1971, as pure magic. A promise made and kept, delivering exactly the adventure it advertises. Then, 7 years from now in 1978, as delusion. A symbol clutched by franchisees who refuse to accept that their kingdom is collapsing beneath their feet, that the corporate parent has abandoned them, that the brand they've invested life savings into is being systematically destroyed through neglect. Finally, in 1996, as evidence discovered in ruins, a water-damaged artifact found in the wreckage of the last burger chef in America. Proof that something meaningful once existed and was destroyed not by market forces or consumer preference or competitive superiority, but by the specific, identifiable failures of corporate executives who valued extraction over investment. This is not a story about hamburgers. Hamburgers are merely the medium, the canvas upon which a larger tragedy plays out in slow motion across 3 decades. This is a forensic examination of how the second largest chain in America, how a company that beat McDonald's in crucial markets, how an innovator that pioneered concepts competitors would later steal and profit from, was systematically destroyed by its own corporate parent through a combination of neglect, mismanagement, and the fundamental incompatibility between conglomerate logic and restaurant reality. This is about the moment when financial extraction replaced operational excellence, when quarterly earnings became more important than customer satisfaction, when a brand stopped being loved and became merely tolerated, then ignored, then forgotten by everyone except the people whose memories were formed in those orange booths. This is the autopsy of Burger Chef, and like all proper autopsies, it begins not with the moment of death, but with the patient's birth, when the body was healthy and vital and the future seemed infinite, and McDonald's was just another regional chain with big ambitions but no clear path to dominance over competitors who understood their markets better. Indianapolis, 1954. Post-war America vibrates with an energy that borders on collective mania, a national mood combining optimism and anxiety in equal measures. Veterans have returned from European battlefields and Pacific islands with memories of horror and mortality that they rarely discuss, married the sweethearts who waited through years of uncertainty and fear, procreated with the urgency of people who've witnessed death firsthand and now crave life expressed through family and normalcy and the rhythms of peaceful existence. They need to feed their expanding households quickly and affordably, without the domestic labor that defined pre-war existence when women spent hours daily preparing meals from raw ingredients. The automobile has evolved from luxury accessory to fundamental necessity, the entire infrastructure of American life rebuilt around its capabilities and limitations. Suburbs sprawl across former farmland, connected by highway systems that promise freedom and mobility. Time itself has accelerated in ways that previous generations would find disorienting. The leisurely 3-hour dinners that defined middle-class life in the 1920s feel antiquated, incompatible with the pace of modern existence where both parents often work and children's schedules overflow with school and sports and activities and television programs that structure family time around broadcast schedule. The restaurant industry in 1954 remains fragmented, inefficient, stuck in operational models dating to the 1920s with minimal innovation. Traditional diners employ waitresses in pink uniforms who take orders on paper pads, deliver them to cooks who prepare meals individually, using techniques unchanged since the Great Depression, bringing food to tables after wait times that routinely stretch to 30 minutes or longer during rush periods. Drive-ins feature car hops on roller skates, delivering food to parked cars, a theatrical experience that's entertaining but fundamentally slow and completely dependent on favorable weather conditions. The few early fast food operations, including the McDonald Brothers' original restaurant in San Bernardino, California, are regional curiosities rather than national phenomena, interesting experiments that might or might not represent the future of American dining. The technology exists for something faster, cheaper, more efficient than anything currently available. But no one has assembled the complete package, the perfect combination of speed and quality and value that will unlock mass market demand. Into this landscape step two men whose names history will forget, but whose vision will feed tens of millions, and whose innovations will influence the entire fast food industry even as their company is destroyed. Frank P. Thomas and Robert E. Wildman. Not restaurateurs in any traditional sense. No culinary training at prestigious cooking schools. No hospitality background from hotel management program. No romantic notions about the art of service or the pleasures of dining or the cultural importance of shared meals. They're food scientists, General Foods employees, middle managers with quiet ambitions and loud ideas who've spent years studying the industrial mathematics of mass production, the chemistry of shelf-stable ingredients, the psychology of consumer behavior and purchasing decisions. They approach restaurants the way Henry Ford approached automobile manufacturing, seeking inefficiencies to eliminate, processes to optimize, waste to purge from every stage of operation. They see business not as art, but as engineering, problems to solve through systematic analysis rather than intuition. They look at the nascent fast food industry and see systematic dysfunction begging to be rationalized through industrial methods. The McDonald brothers in California have interesting ideas about kitchen efficiency and limited menus, but their system relies on griddles that cook slowly and require constant human attention. Each burger needs to be flipped manually, monitored for doneness, removed at the precise moment. It's faster than traditional cooking, but still fundamentally dependent on skilled labor. Drive-ins waste enormous amounts of labor on car hops, whose primary function is walking food from kitchen to car, a transportation problem disguised as hospitality. Traditional diners maintain vast menus requiring extensive inventory and skilled cooks capable of preparing dozens of different dishes, creating complexity that prevents true scalability. Every existing model contains inefficiencies that prevent the kind of exponential growth that manufacturing companies achieve through automation and standardization. Thomas and Wildman's insight, the conceptual breakthrough that will birth an empire and ultimately doom it through mismanagement, is brutally elegant. Flame broiling, not as a cooking method for expensive steaks in upscale restaurants, but as the foundation of an automated fast food system. Burgers pass through flame broilers on conveyor mechanisms, cooking in 90 seconds with consistent char and flavor, impossible to achieve on griddles that require constant attention. No spatulas needed. No human intervention during the cooking process. No burned batches or undercooked centers resulting from distracted workers. Just reliable automation producing superior taste through the Maillard reaction, creating complex flavors that griddle-cooked burgers can't match. The flame broiler itself represents genuine technological innovation that would influence the industry for decades. The device uses natural gas flames positioned above and below a stainless steel conveyor belt that moves raw patties through intense heat. The belt speed is precisely calibrated so that a frozen quarter-pound patty enters one end at 32 degrees Fahrenheit and emerges 90 seconds later at 165 degrees internal temperature, with distinctive char marks and smoky flavor. The dual flame design ensures even cooking without flipping. The continuous motion prevents human error. The entire process requires no culinary skill whatsoever, just the ability to place frozen patties on one end and remove cooked burgers from the other. Thomas and Wildman built their prototype flame broiler by modifying industrial conveyor equipment originally designed for automotive parts manufacturing. They spent 6 months testing different belt speeds, flame temperatures, burner positioning, and airflow configuration. They cooked literally thousands of test burgers, measuring internal temperatures, timing the process, conducting blind taste tests with volunteers. The result was a machine that could cook 40 burgers simultaneously, producing perfect results every 90 seconds, with minimal training required and virtually no possibility of human error affecting quality. They build a prototype kitchen in Indianapolis using borrowed capital and personal saving. Test the system obsessively through hundreds of iterations. Time every motion with stopwatches. Optimize every tool placement through ergonomic analysis. Simplify the menu to items that maximize profit while minimizing operational complexity. Hamburgers with standardized patty weight. Cheeseburgers with precisely portioned cheese slices. A larger double-decker burger targeting customers with bigger appetites. French fries cooked in oil heated to exact temperatures. Milkshakes blended to consistent thickness. Nothing exotic. Nothing requiring specialized culinary skill. Everything designed for speed and consistency that can be maintained by minimally trained workers. The prototype works brilliantly. Burgers emerge from flame broilers with distinctive charred flavor that taste tests show consumers prefer over griddle-cooked alternatives by margins exceeding 60%. The entire meal from order placement to tray delivery. 90 seconds during normal operations, 2 minutes during peak rushes. Fast enough to impress customers accustomed to much longer waits at competing establishments. Slow enough to avoid seeming industrial or mechanical or inhuman, maintaining the perception of food prepared fresh rather than mass-produced. And then they make the decision that will define Burger Chef's entire trajectory from birth to death. They pitch General Foods for capital, rather than seeking restaurant industry partners or private investors who understand hospitality. The logic seems sound. General Foods in 1954 is flush with cash from Maxwell House Coffee, dominating American breakfast tables with market share exceeding 40%. From Jell-O becoming so synonymous with gelatin desserts that the brand name replaces the generic term in common usage. From Birdseye revolutionizing frozen vegetable consumption and creating entirely new eating patterns in American households. The conglomerate sees potential in Burger Chef because the pitch emphasizes operational efficiency metrics and unit economics that translate perfectly to their existing analytical frameworks, the same spreadsheet logic that works for products with 18-month shelf lives. Thomas and Wildman receive funding. Substantial funding that allows aggressive expansion plans, but not partnership, not autonomy, not the freedom to execute their vision without corporate oversight from executives who've never operated a restaurant, just capital that comes with strings attached to quarterly reporting requirements, profit margin expectations that match other General Foods divisions, and the fundamental assumption that restaurant management follows the same principles as selling instant coffee to grocery stores. The first Burger Chef opens in Indianapolis in 1954. A date that seems inevitable in retrospect, but represents thousands of small decisions and calculated risks that could have failed at dozens of decision points. The building functions as architectural manifesto. Every element chosen for strategic purpose rather than aesthetic appeal. That distinctive peaked roof isn't decoration or designer whimsy. It's advertising deployed through architecture, form designed for maximum visibility from moving automobiles traveling at 35 miles per hour. The orange and white color scheme chosen not for beauty, but for its neurological impact on human visual perception. Its ability to capture attention from distances that matter in car-oriented commercial development where customers make split-second decisions about where to stop. The height of the roof peak calculated to ensure visibility over competing single-story commercial structures. The angle of panels engineered to catch sunlight during critical morning and afternoon rush periods when shadows from other buildings might obscure shorter signage. The lighting system designed to transform the building into a glowing beacon after dark, visible from a mile away in flat Midwest topography. Inside, the operation achieves mechanical precision that would make efficiency experts admire its elegance. Burgers hit flame broilers in synchronized waves, timed to average ordering patterns observed during months of testing. Buns toast to exact specifications that achieve the perfect balance between structural integrity necessary to hold ingredients without falling apart and soft texture that customers prefer. French fries emerge from oil heated to precisely 375 degrees Fahrenheit, held at that temperature by thermostats accurate to within 2 degrees. Golden and uniform, and achieving the crispy exterior and fluffy interior that makes them craveable rather than merely acceptable. The entire meal from order placement to tray delivery. 90 seconds during normal operations. But speed alone, Thomas and Wildman understood from extensive consumer research and competitive analysis, wouldn't build an empire in an increasingly crowded marketplace. Americans were developing speed expectations as automobiles and telecommunications and mass media accelerated the pace of daily life. Speed was becoming table stakes, expected rather than remarkable, necessary but insufficient for competitive advantage. The true value proposition had to transcend mere velocity and touch something deeper in the American psyche: democratic abundance at affordable prices. The revolutionary idea that luxury experiences and premium quality shouldn't be reserved exclusively for the wealthy, that working-class families deserved access to restaurant dining without requiring middle-class incomes. This is where the war with McDonald's begins, not in 1971, when Burger Chef reaches peak power with 1,200 locations. Not even in the 1960s, when both chains expand aggressively across the country. But here, in 1954, when both companies are regional operations with national ambitions and the entire fast food industry is small enough that every player watches every other player's moves with careful attention. McDonald's, founded by the McDonald brothers and later purchased by Ray Kroc, in a deal that would make him fabulously wealthy, charges 35 cents for a basic hamburger in 1954. It's cheap compared to traditional restaurants where complete meals cost $2 or more, but expensive enough to make working-class families think carefully about regular patronage. 2 parents and 3 children ordering basic hamburgers total $1.75 plus drinks and fries, reaching $3 for a complete family meal. Meaningful money when median household income is $4,300 annually, and many working-class families earn substantially less. Burger Chef undercuts them by a dime on every item. 25 cents for a hamburger, the same price as a comic book or a movie ticket for children, or an hour of parking downtown. Pocket change for adults with steady employment, achievable savings for kids doing household chores and yard work. And the Big Chef, Burger Chef's signature sandwich developed in 1956 after 2 years of recipe testing and consumer feedback, costs 15 cents despite containing 2 beef patties instead of 1. 2 beef patties sourced from General Foods' supplier network at volume discounts that independent restaurants couldn't possibly negotiate. Special sauce formulated in General Foods laboratories using ingredients available at commodity prices. Lettuce and tomatoes contracted annually with agricultural suppliers who provide consistency and cost certainty in exchange for guaranteed purchase volumes. Cheese from General Foods' dairy division sold at transfer pricing rather than market rates. Pickles and onions purchased in quantities triggering wholesale pricing structures. A 3-piece sesame seed bun baked to exact specifications by partners who understand that Burger Chef's volume makes them valuable long-term customers worth cultivating. The entire sandwich assembled for less than 9 cents in food costs through supply chain advantages that only corporate backing could provide, sold for 15 cents, generating margins that seem impossible until you understand the leverage that General Foods' purchasing power provides. The public responds not with measured interest, but with something approaching frenzy, the kind of viral adoption that occurs when products achieve perfect product-market fit. Lines form constantly. Morning breakfast rushes where factory workers grab quick meals before first shifts. Lunch surges when office employees flee their desks seeking fast service. Dinner waves when exhausted parents choose convenience over home cooking that requires hours of preparation and cleanup. Late-night visits from teenagers with driver's licenses and discretionary income from part-time jobs. The customer base transcends traditional demographic boundaries. Blue-collar families stretching limited budgets. White-collar professionals valuing time over money. Senior citizens on fixed incomes making restaurant dining affordable. College students spending their last dollars before payday arrives. 1 location becomes 2 within 6 months. 2 becomes 10 within a year. 10 becomes 50 within 2 years. By 1958, just 4 years after opening the first location, 800 Burger Chef restaurants spread across the Midwest following population density maps and car ownership statistics and highway development patterns with the precision of strategic military deployment. The flame broiler technology, producing food faster while achieving superior flavor compared to McDonald's griddles, becomes the competitive moat that theoretically protects market position. Franchisees flock to Indianapolis with checkbooks open and business plans prepared. Eyes glazed with expansion fever, that intoxicating combination of greed and genuine belief that this opportunity represents generational wealth creation, that being early to a revolutionary concept will generate returns justifying substantial risks. McDonald's, operating primarily in California and slowly expanding eastward 1 market at a time, watches Burger Chef's explosive Midwest growth with the kind of careful attention that military strategists pay to superior enemy forces. Ray Kroc, who purchased McDonald's from the original brothers in 1961 in a deal that would eventually generate billions in wealth, understands that Burger Chef represents his primary competitive threat, not in burger quality where he believes McDonald's is superior, not in operational efficiency where McDonald's assembly line system sets industry standards, but in the race to become America's default hamburger destination, the brand that families think of first when considering fast food options. And in 1962, Burger Chef is winning that race decisively in every market where both chains compete directly. The Indianapolis metropolitan area tells the story with brutal clarity. Burger Chef operates 23 locations strategically positioned near residential neighborhoods and shopping centers. McDonald's has 4 locations concentrated downtown where real estate costs are higher and family traffic is lower. Customer surveys commissioned by local business journals show Burger Chef winning on taste preference, perceived value, and family friendliness. McDonald's wins only on brand recognition among customers who've relocated from California. And even that advantage is eroding rapidly as Burger Chef saturates local advertising through radio spots and billboard campaigns and sponsorship of high school football games. In Cincinnati, the competitive dynamics are even more dramatic. Burger Chef controls 31 locations by 1963, while McDonald's operates just 7. Market research shows that 68% of families with children under 12 consider Burger Chef their preferred fast food destination. Price surveys reveal that Burger Chef's family meal costs on average 22% less than equivalent McDonald's purchases. Local newspaper restaurant critics, reviewing fast food for the first time as the category gains cultural legitimacy, consistently rate Burger Chef's flame-broiled burgers superior to McDonald's griddle-cooked alternatives. The flame-broiling advantage proves particularly powerful in blind taste tests. When consumers taste burgers without knowing which chain prepared them, Burger Chef wins preference by margins exceeding 15 percentage points consistently across dozens of independent surveys. The char marks and smoky flavor created by direct flame contact create taste profiles that griddles simply cannot replicate. McDonald's burgers, while perfectly adequate and consistently prepared, taste flatter, less complex, missing the depth that Maillard reactions produce when meat encounters open flame. In Detroit, the story repeats with even starker numbers. Burger Chef enters the market in 1959 with aggressive pricing and superior flame-broiled flavor. Within 3 years, they operate 18 locations, while McDonald's struggles with 7. Local automotive workers, accustomed to factory cafeterias serving mediocre food, embrace Burger Chef as affordable luxury. Union newsletters feature advertisements. Plant managers report workers leaving facilities during lunch breaks to visit nearby Burger Chefs, timing their trips to the minute to maximize eating time while staying within 30-minute breaks. A General Motors assembly line supervisor named Gerald Morrison becomes a regular, visiting the Burger Chef on 8 Mile Road 5 days a week. He always orders the same thing: 2 big chefs, large fries, chocolate shake. Total cost, 47 cents. He could pack a lunch from home for 15 cents, but those 32 cents buy him flame-broiled taste and the small dignity of being served rather than eating alone from a metal lunchbox. Morrison represents millions of working Americans for whom Burger Chef isn't just food, it's accessible aspiration. This is Burger Chef's golden age, the period from 1958 to 1968 when everything works according to plan, when the flame broilers produce superior burgers that customers genuinely prefer over griddle-cooked alternatives, when prices undercut all competitors while maintaining healthy profit margins through supply chain advantages, when expansion is both profitable and sustainable, each new location generating positive cash flow within months, when franchisees make money and enthusiastically recruit their friends and business associates, when customers return loyally, sometimes multiple times per week, creating the kind of habitual purchasing behavior that builds durable brands, when employees take genuine pride in those distinctive orange uniforms and the association with a growing successful company. And this is when Thomas and Wildman make the decision that will ultimately seal Burger Chef's fate. They accept General Foods' offer to purchase the company outright, rather than maintaining independence or seeking partners from within the restaurant industry. The buyout happens in 1960 for undisclosed terms that make both founders wealthy, but not spectacularly so. The logic seems unassailable. General Foods offers capital for massive expansion that could challenge McDonald's nationally rather than remaining regional. Access to corporate infrastructure, including legal departments and real estate specialists and marketing expertise. Distribution networks that could reduce food costs even further through even larger volume purchasing. Professional management that could handle complexity as the chain grows beyond what two founders can oversee personally. But the deal contains poison that won't become apparent for years. General Foods purchases not just the company, but complete control over strategy and operations. Thomas and Wildman transition from owners making final decisions to employees whose recommendations can be overruled by executives in White Plains who've never worked a restaurant shift. From entrepreneurs with direct stakes in success to managers compensated through salaries rather than equity appreciation. The first changes are subtle enough to seem reasonable. Corporate reporting requirements that consume management time with paperwork and presentation. Quarterly targets that prioritize short-term metrics over long-term strategy. Franchise approval processes that emphasize financial capacity over operational competence. Accepting anyone who can write a check rather than carefully vetting franchisees for relevant experience and commitment to brand standard. Each individual change makes sense when explained by General Foods executives who cite best practices from other industries. Collectively, they begin disconnecting Burger Chef from the operational instincts that made it successful. One early decision proves particularly consequential. In 1961, Thomas proposes investing $2 million in upgrading flame broilers across all locations to a new model he and Wildman have developed that cooks 30% faster while using 20% less natural gas. The improved broilers would maintain Burger Chef's technological advantage and reduce operating costs for franchisees. General Foods financial analysts reject the proposal. The payback period exceeds their 18-month threshold for capital investment. The money would be better deployed, they argue, opening new locations that generate immediate revenue rather than upgrading equipment at existing restaurants that already function adequately. Thomas argues passionately that McDonald's is improving their griddle technology and that Burger Chef needs to maintain its quality advantage. The analysts respond with spreadsheets showing that customer complaints about food quality represent less than 2% of total transactions, an acceptable level that doesn't justify major capital expenditures. The decision is final. The flame broilers won't be upgraded. Thomas, recognizing that his operational expertise is being systematically overruled by financial logic, begins considering whether he wants to remain with a company where his judgment is no longer valued. But revenue keeps climbing throughout the early 1960s despite these early warning signs. By 1965, Burger Chef operates from 900 locations. By 1967, 1,000. The stock price, since General Foods is publicly traded, reflects Burger Chef's growth in quarterly earnings report. Wall Street analysts praise the acquisition as evidence of successful diversification strategy, General Foods demonstrating ability to apply operational excellence beyond traditional packaged goods categories. In 1966, a pivotal year that receives insufficient attention in retrospectives, Burger Chef actually surpasses McDonald's in total locations for exactly 3 months. From June through August, Burger Chef operates 1,047 restaurants, while McDonald's has 1,032. Trade publications run headlines celebrating Burger Chef's achievement. Indiana chain overtakes Golden Arches. Local newspapers in markets where Burger Chef dominates treat the milestone as validation of Midwest superiority over California trends. Franchisees celebrate with a conference in Indianapolis where champagne flows and optimism runs unchecked, but the celebration proves premature. McDonald's responds to the competitive threat not with panic, but with systematic operational improvements that will define Ray Kroc's legacy. They invest heavily in employee training programs that reduce turnover and improve service consistency. They develop more rigorous franchise vetting processes that ensure new owners have both capital and competence. They upgrade equipment across their entire chain, accepting short-term costs for long-term competitive positioning. They launch national marketing campaigns with budgets that dwarf regional competitors. And then, in 1968, McDonald's makes its countermove that will eventually prove fatal to Burger Chef's market position. They introduce the Big Mac, a direct copy of Burger Chef's Big Chef concept that's been successful for over a decade. 2 beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. The formula is identical, shameless mimicry without any attempt at innovation or differentiation. But McDonald's doesn't just copy the sandwich architecture. They improve every element of execution through the systematic operational excellence that Ray Kroc has built into the company's DNA. Fresher ingredients sourced through supply chain management that prioritizes quality over absolute minimum cost. Better training programs that transform burger assembly from mindless repetition into a skill that employees take pride in mastering. Cleaner restaurants maintained through rigorous standards enforced by corporate inspectors who visit locations unannounced and document every deficiency. And most devastatingly, marketing that transforms a sandwich into a cultural phenomenon. The 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun jingle, developed by advertising agency Needham, Harper & Steers, embeds itself in American consciousness with the kind of viral penetration that defines cultural moments. Children sing it unprompted on playgrounds. Adults recognize it instantly and can recite it from memory decades later. The phrase becomes shorthand for the sandwich, then metonymically for McDonald's itself, then generically for fast food as a cultural category. The marketing budget McDonald's dedicates to Big Mac promotion in its first 2 years exceeds Burger Chef's entire annual advertising spend across all markets and all products. Burger Chef's response, managed by General Foods' in-house marketing team rather than specialized agencies with restaurant industry expertise, proves catastrophically inadequate. Generic television commercials featuring happy families eating burgers, footage that could advertise any hamburger chain, generating no distinctive brand association, no memorable jingles that lodge in consumer memory and drive repeat purchasing, no cultural penetration beyond functional awareness that Burger Chef exists as a dining option. The company that pioneered the double-decker burger concept 12 years before McDonald's copied it now watches helplessly as competitors steal their innovation and execute marketing so superior that most Americans eventually believe McDonald's invented the concept. Market share begins eroding with the steady inevitability of water wearing away stone, 2% one quarter, as some customers try the heavily advertised Big Mac and discover they enjoy it, 3% the next quarter as positive word of mouth spreads through social networks and workplaces, 4% the quarter after as the Big Mac becomes the default choice for customers seeking filling meals at reasonable prices, 5% in early 1969 as McDonald's saturates television advertising during primetime slots that Burger Chef can't afford. The decline is gradual enough that each individual quarter seems explainable through external factors that executives can rationalize. Unusual weather patterns affecting traffic to suburban locations, economic slowdowns reducing discretionary spending on restaurant meals, seasonal fluctuations that will reverse themselves when circumstances normalize, but viewed across years rather than quarters, the trend line becomes unmistakable and deeply alarming. Burger Chef is losing the war for market share to a competitor that's outmaneuvering them strategically, while Burger Chef's corporate parent focuses on maximizing quarterly earnings rather than competitive positioning. This is when the second major innovation arrives, and it's genuinely spectacular. The kind of breakthrough that should cement competitive advantage for years and potentially reverse the market share erosion that Big Mac introduction has caused. In 1969, after 18 months of development and testing, Burger Chef introduces the Fun Meal, a complete children's meal packaged in castle-emblazoned containers, including a hamburger sized for small appetites, a portion of French fries, a small drink, and most importantly, a toy chosen to appeal to specific age demographics. The concept is revolutionary in ways that won't become apparent for years. McDonald's won't introduce the Happy Meal until 1979, a full decade later, after watching Fun Meals succeed and deciding to copy the formula exactly. Burger King won't offer kids' meals until 1980. Wendy's waits until 1981. But Burger Chef, guided by consumer psychologists who understand that brand loyalty formed in childhood through positive emotional associations persists for lifetimes and influences adult purchasing behavior decades later, is already transforming dinner from mere sustenance into adventure and entertainment and memory creation. The psychology driving Fun Meal design is sophisticated despite the simple execution. Research conducted by General Foods' consumer behavior team through focus groups and observational studies reveals that children don't just want food that satisfies hunger. They want experiences that make them feel special, that differentiate restaurant visits from eating at home where meals are mandatory rather than treats. They want objects that persist beyond the meal, that can be collected and traded and displayed, that provide tangible proof of the experience and fuel for imaginative play, that extends the value of the purchase far beyond the minutes spent eating. The toys, initially sourced from Asian manufacturers for approximately 8 cents each through General Foods' international supplier network, are carefully designed to create powerful behavioral loops that drive repeat visits and build lasting brand affinity. Each toy series consists of 6 to 8 different items that children collect over multiple visits: a set of dinosaur figurines, a series of space-themed puzzles. Character toys from popular television shows licensed through partnerships. The incomplete collection creates psychological tension that can only be resolved through repeated purchases. Children trade duplicates with friends at school and in neighborhoods, creating social dynamics and peer conversations centered around Burger Chef patronage. They display complete collections on bedroom shelves as visible status symbols and reminders of positive experiences that prompt requests to return. Parents, interviewed in market research studies, report that children begin requesting Burger Chef visits days in advance based on advertisements announcing new toy series launches. The castle logo on those boxes, raised and tactile and promising wonders, inside like a medieval fortress, promising safety and adventure to travelers, represents everything Burger Chef understands about American families that McDonald's initially misses despite their operational superiority in other areas. Feed the children cheaply enough that parents don't resist repeat visits even on tight budgets, with complete fun meals priced at just 99 cents compared to ordering individual items. Feed them quickly enough that family dining doesn't become an ordeal, testing everyone's patience during the difficult transition between work and home. Make them smile and associate Burger Chef with happiness and treats and special occasions rather than mere sustenance. Transform the restaurant from a convenience into a destination that children actively request by name. And watch as those kids drag their parents back weekly, creating revenue streams that flow not from rational adult decision-making about food quality or price, but from the inexorable force of childhood desire and parental guilt about denying simple pleasures that cost less than $1. The strategy works with devastating effectiveness that even General Foods executives monitoring performance metrics from New York offices can recognize in sales data. Burger Chef locations near elementary schools, strategically positioned within walking distance or short drives from family neighborhoods, report that 70% of sales during dinner hours come from fun meal purchases rather than regular menu items. Traffic counts show that families with children visit an average of 2 times per month compared to 1.4 times for adults without children. Parents interviewed by market researchers conducting focus groups in shopping mall food courts admit that their children's preferences dictate restaurant selection more than their own criteria regarding food quality or price or convenience, that saying no to fun meal requests creates emotional conflicts they'd rather avoid. The toys themselves become genuine collectible items that children discuss extensively with peers. Playground conversations revolve around who has which dinosaurs, who needs which space puzzle pieces, who's willing to trade duplicates. Teachers in elementary schools report confiscating Burger Chef toys that distract students during class time. Youth sports leagues begin receiving sponsorship offers from local Burger Chef franchises who recognize that team events drive group visits and create positive associations between the brand and childhood achievement. McDonald's watches this innovation with the same professional attention they paid to the Big Chef years earlier. Acknowledgement of competitive threat combined with immediate determination to copy and improve. But their response is delayed by corporate debates about whether kids' meals align with their brand positioning, by concerns about cannibalization of regular menu sales, by skepticism from franchisees who don't want to manage toy inventory. This hesitation gives Burger Chef an unprecedented decade-long head start in the family dining segment that represents the highest value demographic because it drives frequent repeat visits and builds loyalty that theoretically persists into adulthood. By 1970, Burger Chef operates 1,200 locations scattered across 45 states, the second largest hamburger chain globally, trailing only McDonald's, which has surged past them again through relentless expansion and superior execution. In press releases distributed to business media, the statistic sounds triumphant, evidence of successful growth and market penetration. Yet beneath the surface, operational metrics tell a different story. Same-store sales, measuring performance at locations open more than 1 year, declined quarter over quarter for the first time in company history. Customer satisfaction scores tracked through independent surveys show steady erosion. Employee turnover has accelerated to 300% annually, meaning entire restaurant crews turn over completely 3 times per year. Thomas and Wildman, the visionaries who built Burger Chef from imagination and flame-broiled innovation, recognize these warning signs with alarm. In a September 1970 meeting with General Foods senior management, they present a detailed analysis of competitive threats and recommend a comprehensive 3-year plan requiring $40 million in capital investment. Upgrade flame broilers at all locations to maintain technological advantage. Launch national marketing campaigns matching McDonald's spending levels. Improve franchise support with dedicated regional managers and rapid response maintenance teams. Invest in employee training programs that reduce turnover and improve service quality. The General Foods executives listen politely. They thank Thomas and Wildman for their analysis. And then they reject every recommendation. The restaurant division, they explain, must generate returns consistent with other business units. $40 million in additional investment would reduce profitability below acceptable thresholds. The company has obligations to shareholders. Capital must be allocated where it generates maximum returns across the entire corporate portfolio. Within 6 months, both Thomas and Wildman resign. They're not fired or forced out through explicit pressure, just marginalized systematically until departure becomes the only dignified option available to people who still possess pride and self-respect. General Foods replaces them with professional managers recruited from other industries, MBAs from prestigious universities who understand financial analysis and corporate strategy, but have never smelled burning grease at 2 a.m., or dealt with demanding customers, or trained nervous teenagers, or built relationships with franchisees who've invested life savings based on corporate promises. The new management team, led by a former Procter & Gamble executive named Richard Mayfield, arrives convinced that restaurant operations can be optimized using the same analytical methods that work for detergent and toothpaste. Mayfield's first initiative focuses on reducing food costs by renegotiating supplier contracts without regard for quality implications. Beef patty specifications are relaxed, allowing suppliers to include more fat content. Cheese thickness is reduced by 20%. Bun size shrinks slightly. Each change saves pennies per transaction. Collectively, they degrade the product customers have learned to expect. Meanwhile, in markets across America, McDonald's systematically improves every aspect of their operations. Ray Kroc, obsessed with operational excellence in ways that the new Burger Chef leadership fundamentally misunderstands, invests profits aggressively into competitive advantages that compound over time. Better equipment that cooks food faster and more consistently, reducing wait times and improving quality. Superior training programs that transform burger assembly into a systematic process where employees take pride in mastering techniques and advancing through clear career paths. Cleaner restaurants maintained through rigorous standards that corporate inspectors enforce without exception during unannounced visits. More aggressive marketing campaigns with budgets that seem insane to Burger Chef executives but prove devastatingly effective at building brand awareness and emotional connections with families. The golden arches become as instantly recognizable as American flags or Coca-Cola logos embedded so deeply in visual culture that they transcend commercial advertising and become cultural symbols. Ronald McDonald, introduced in 1963 and aggressively promoted through television and local appearances, becomes more familiar to children than most elected officials or religious figures. The brand embeds itself into collective consciousness as the default choice for fast food, the standard against which all competitors are measured and usually found wanting. The contrast between McDonald's ascending trajectory and Burger Chef's stagnant performance becomes impossible to ignore by 1971. In markets where both chains compete directly, McDonald's systematically destroys Burger Chef through superior execution of nearly identical concepts. The hamburgers cost roughly the same, within pennies. The restaurants look superficially similar to casual observers, both featuring bright colors and limited menus and fast service. But the actual customer experience differs dramatically. The McDonald's food arrives consistently hotter because their equipment works and training ensures quality standard. The service flows faster because employees receive better preparation. The dining rooms shine brighter because corporate standards are enforced rather than suggested. The brand pulses with contemporary energy because marketing budgets allow constant reinforcement. And in 1972, inside a General Foods boardroom in White Plains, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlook suburban office parks rather than restaurant parking lots, where quarterly performance reviews determine executive bonuses and career trajectories, a conclusion is reached that seals Burger Chef's ultimate fate, even though the company will continue operating for another 9 years. Management consultants retained to analyze General Foods' portfolio performance deliver their verdict in a leather-bound report that cost more to produce than most Burger Chef employees earn annually. Begin systematic divestment, not through abrupt shutdown that would destroy remaining value and trigger franchisee lawsuits. not through fire sales generating negative publicity, but methodically through what they euphemistically term harvest strategy. The strategy unfolds with bureaucratic efficiency. Budget requests from Burger Chef management for equipment replacements are routinely denied regardless of operational justification. Plans for rolling upgrades to flame broilers are cancelled to preserve cash for dividend payment. Expansion initiatives into promising new markets are terminated immediately. Marketing spending is slashed to bare minimums necessary to maintain the legal fiction that Burger Chef remains an active operating brand. Franchisees notice first. Equipment breaks with increasing frequency as flame broilers age past manufacturer-recommended replacement schedules. Requests for repairs go unanswered for weeks or receive responses directing them to source parts independently. Advertising campaigns that once saturated local markets disappear completely. Co-op advertising funds are eliminated unilaterally without explanation. Regional managers who once visited locations regularly are laid off in cost reduction initiatives. In Cincinnati, a franchisee named Robert Hendricks, who operates 4 locations and has invested over $200,000, watches his businesses deteriorate despite his best efforts. His flame broilers, installed in 1966 and now 6 years old, break down weekly. Corporate refuses to authorize replacements or even provide maintenance technicians. Hendricks hires independent repair services, but the costs consume his profit margins. His advertising budget, previously matched by corporate co-op funds, now comes entirely from his pocket and can't compete with McDonald's saturation campaigns. His employees quit for jobs at McDonald's locations that pay the same wages but offer better working conditions. In September 1973, after 18 months of declining revenues and increasingly desperate circumstances, Hendricks drives to Indianapolis to meet personally with General Foods regional management. He brings financial records documenting his losses. He brings photographs of broken equipment. He brings copies of franchise agreements, highlighting corporate obligations that aren't being met. The meeting lasts 17 minutes. The executives thank him for coming. They promise to review his concerns. He never hears from them again. Within 6 months, Hendricks closes all 4 locations and files for personal bankruptcy. His life savings, invested based on corporate promises, evaporate. His marriage, strained by financial stress, ends in divorce. He takes a job managing a grocery store, earning in a year what he once made in a good month. Stories like Hendricks repeat across the country. Some franchisees fight back through legal channels, forming regional advocacy groups and pooling resources to hire specialized franchise litigation attorneys. They file lawsuits in multiple states alleging breach of contract and failure to provide promised support and misrepresentation of brand value during franchise sales processes. The legal battles stretch across years, consuming enormous amounts of money and emotional energy, generating newspaper coverage that further damages brand reputation. Most cases eventually settle out of court for small fractions of claimed damages through agreements that let General Foods escape without admitting liability while leaving franchisees barely compensated for their losses. The message becomes clear. Corporate will not provide the support that franchise agreements promise. Your choices are: accept these conditions, close your restaurant, or waste money fighting legal battles you probably won't win. Other franchisees simply close and walk away. The distinctive peaked roofs that once symbolized innovation become symbols of abandonment. Empty buildings sit vacant for months, with faded orange paint peeling in the weather. Parking lots surrender to weeds pushing through cracks in deteriorating asphalt. Drive-through windows are boarded up with plywood tagged by graffiti artists. For lease signs, stay posted for extended periods because the buildings are too specialized, too visibly identified with failure to attract new tenants. The teenage employees who remain at operating Burger Chef locations increasingly view their jobs with contempt. The chain that once competed with McDonald's for talent now gets whoever's desperate or directionless enough to accept minimum wage. Cool kids with options work at McDonald's, which offers training programs and advancement paths. Burger Chef gets the leftovers from local labor markets. Turnover accelerates to levels that make consistent operations nearly impossible. Entire crews turn over every 3 months. Managers hire literally whoever walks through the door, conducting minimal vetting. Institutional knowledge evaporates as experienced workers leave. The choreographed kitchen ballet Thomas designed devolves into improvised chaos where workers develop their own procedures and ignore training materials because no one enforces standards. Wait times lengthen during rush periods because understaffed kitchens can't handle volume. Burgers arrive cold or overcooked because malfunctioning flame broilers can't maintain proper temperatures. French fries emerge pale and limp because oil isn't changed frequently and fryers aren't maintained. Dining rooms accumulate visible decay. Orange paint fades to rusty brown. Vinyl booth upholstery cracks and splits, exposing yellow foam. Floors become perpetually sticky from inadequate mopping. Bathrooms develop persistent odors because plumbing isn't maintained and supplies aren't restocked consistently. The fun meal boxes still promise adventure through that raised castle logo, but the toys inside deteriorate in quality as General Foods squeezes suppliers for cost reduction. Flimsy plastic that breaks during normal play instead of durable die-cast metal. Puzzles with pieces that don't fit properly. Board games with instructions printed so poorly they're barely legible. The castle logo remains embossed and tactile, but the promise grows hollow as children receive disappointing toys and lose enthusiasm for collecting. Parents notice without needing formal surveys. They don't complain loudly or organize boycotts. They simply visit less frequently, quietly shifting business to McDonald's or Burger King or competitors who've maintained or improved quality. The customer erosion happens gradually enough that each monthly decline seems statistically insignificant. But compound those small declines across quarters and years, and the trajectory becomes catastrophic. And then comes November 17th, 1978, a Friday night that will transform Burger Chef from a struggling chain into a true crime legend that persists in public consciousness decades after the brand itself becomes completely forgotten. The Burger Chef restaurant on Speedway in Indianapolis, located in a working-class neighborhood where factory workers and service employees rent small houses, prepares for the evening rush. 4 employees clock in for what should be a routine closing shift. Jane Freet, the 20-year-old assistant manager who takes her responsibilities seriously despite minimum wage compensation barely above poverty levels. Her dreams of saving for college tuition are deferred, but not abandoned, still flickering with possibility. Daniel Davis and Mark Flemons, both 16, high school students working part-time to fund ordinary teenage expenses, cars and dates and records and movies, and the thousand small costs that make adolescence expensive. Ruth Ellen Shelton, 18, recently graduated, working at Burger Chef while trying to figure out what comes next, whether to pursue more education despite financial barriers, whether to find better employment in a limited local labor market, whether to just continue doing this because at least it's familiar and safe and pays enough to cover basic expenses. They don't know this night will make their names more famous than the company employing them, that the castle logo on fun meal boxes will become associated permanently not with childhood joy, but with unspeakable horror and unresolved mystery that haunts Indianapolis for generations. That true crime documentaries and podcasts and books will examine every detail of their final hours, analyzing forensic evidence and proposing theories, keeping their memories alive long after Burger Chef itself has been erased from commercial existence. Sometime between 11 p.m. and midnight, in the dark gap between closing time and when the next shift would arrive Saturday morning, something goes catastrophically wrong. The exact details remain disputed, investigated exhaustively by multiple law enforcement agencies, theorized endlessly by amateur detectives and true crime enthusiasts, but never definitively resolved despite decades of police work and FBI involvement and thousands of investigative hours. What's known with certainty? At closing time, the restaurant is empty except for the 4 employees following standard procedures, counting registers and reconciling receipts, cleaning equipment and wiping surfaces and mopping floors, securing the building, locking doors and setting alarms. And then, nothing. Silence. Darkness. An absolute absence where 4 lives should continue. Saturday morning arrives with cold November sunlight. The day shift employees pull into the parking lot, expecting an ordinary weekend morning. Instead, they find the back door partially ajar, moving slightly in the wind like a mouth trying unsuccessfully to form words. Inside, chairs are overturned in the dining room, scattered in patterns suggesting struggle or hasty departure. Money is missing from the registers, approximately $500, enough to suggest robbery, but not nearly enough to explain the chaos and the complete disappearance of 4 human beings. There's a profound sense of wrongness that transcends the merely unusual. Blood is notably absent. No obvious signs of violence beyond overturned furniture, just an uncanny emptiness, and the persistent sense that the scene contains meanings that aren't immediately apparent. Police are called at 7:43 a.m. An investigation begins with the bureaucratic slowness, typical of a small city police department unprepared for major crimes. Detectives interview day shift employees trying to determine normal closing procedures and what appears missing beyond cash and people. They interview night managers from other Burger Chef locations, asking about standard procedures and whether the Speedway location had reported problems or suspicious incidents. They collect physical evidence, photographing the scene and dusting for fingerprints. Missing persons reports are filed for all 4 employees. Families begin the agonizing wait for information, for any communication that breaks the terrible uncertainty of not knowing whether their loved ones are dead or alive. 2 days later, on Sunday afternoon, hunters walking through a wooded area approximately 30 miles north of Indianapolis discover 4 bodies dumped in a remote location far from roads. Jane, Daniel, Mark, Ruth, Ellen. All dead, their lives ended with violence. The official cause of death listed in coroner's reports as gunshot wounds, clinical bureaucratic language that abstracts away from the human reality. But the crime scene evidence examined by investigating officers suggests something far worse than a simple robbery turned violent. Physical evidence indicating torture. Signs suggesting prolonged captivity before death, indications that the victims experienced hours of fear and suffering while perpetrators did things that official police reports describe in carefully sanitized language, but which haunt investigating officers for years. The Burger Chef murders become international news, covered extensively by network television and national newspapers and magazines like Time and Newsweek, not because they're unique in violent, crime-saturated 1970s America, where murder rates reached historic peaks. Not because the death toll is particularly high compared to other mass murders dominating headlines, but because of the jarring cognitive dissonance between setting and violence. A fast food restaurant, perhaps the most mundane environment imaginable in American life, a symbol of normalcy and family values and safe suburban existence, places where children eat and families gather for quick dinners and teenagers earn first paychecks. The contrast between the ordinary setting and extraordinary brutality creates a narrative that captures public attention with unusual intensity that continues for decades. The case is never solved despite enormous investigative efforts. The Indianapolis Police Department dedicates thousands of officer hours. The FBI assists with federal resources and forensic expertise and access to national databases. Suspects emerge from tips, are thoroughly investigated and interrogated, and ultimately evaporate when evidence proves insufficient or alibis check out. Theories proliferate wildly. Was it a robbery that escalated? A targeted attack by someone known to victims? Random violence by a passing predator? Organized crime? A serial killer? Each theory has circumstantial evidence supporting it and passionate advocates. Each has logical contradictions and evidentiary gaps, preventing definitive conclusions. For Burger Chef, as a corporate entity and commercial brand, the murders prove symbolically and practically catastrophic. The brand becomes permanently associated with death and tragedy and unsolved mystery in collective public memory. Parents already noticing declining quality and reading news coverage about corporate conflicts with franchisees now have an additional powerful emotional reason to choose McDonald's or Burger King instead. The Castle logo on fun meal boxes, once promising adventure and magic, now evokes something darker in the collective unconscious, triggering associations with violence rather than happiness. The restaurant on Speedway, where the employees disappeared, becomes first a memorial site, where community members leave flowers and teddy bears, then a morbid curiosity attracting true crime enthusiasts who photograph the building and speculate, then a location that families actively avoid because of psychological association. The location's sales decline by 60% within 3 months. Corporate authorizes the franchisee to close the restaurant permanently within 6 months, unable to overcome the stigma. But the murders, as horrific as they were, only accelerate trends already in motion. The real rupture occurred 6 years earlier in 1972, when General Foods executives chose divestment over sustained investment. By 1981, 9 years after that strategic decision, and 3 years after the murders intensified negative brand associations, General Foods finds a buyer. Hardee's, a southeastern hamburger chain with ambitions of national expansion and a history of acquiring distressed restaurant chains. The sale price is $75 million, a figure that sounds substantial until you realize Burger Chef generated $400 million in annual revenue just a decade earlier. The company is being sold for approximately 1/5 of a single year's previous sales, a valuation that reflects how thoroughly General Foods destroyed brand value. The sale is structured as an asset purchase. Hardee's wants the physical real estate, valuable locations in markets where they don't currently operate. They want whatever equipment remains functional after years of deferred maintenance. They want supply contracts and distributor relationships. They explicitly don't want anything that actually makes Burger Chef distinctive. Not the Burger Chef name itself, not the proprietary recipes, not the operational systems, not the franchise agreement, not the employees who've remained loyal despite impossible working conditions. Everything that made Burger Chef unique is considered worthless and assigned zero value in the acquisition paperwork. The Castle logo is valued at exactly $0 in transaction documents. The flame broiler technology is assessed purely as scrap metal. The franchise relationships are treated as legal obligations to be terminated rather than assets worth preserving. Hardee's begins converting Burger Chef locations immediately after the acquisition closes in March 1981, moving with the ruthless efficiency of an invading army. They dispatch crews to repaint buildings in Hardee's corporate red and yellow colors, completely erasing Burger Chef's distinctive orange and white scheme. They replace or remove the distinctive peaked roofs with standard commercial architecture. They tear down all signage and branding, removing Castle logos and replacing them with Hardee's material. They introduce the Hardee's menu completely, discontinuing every Burger Chef product without exception, including the Big Chef and Fun Meals. They terminate employees en masse or offer them positions in the new Hardee's restaurants, but only at the lowest pay grades. Within 18 months, Burger Chef has been violently erased from most of America, not slowly through natural market forces, not gently through gradual rebranding, but aggressively and systematically, as if 1,200 restaurants serving millions of customers annually never stood on these sites. As if the brand that competed directly with McDonald's and pioneered revolutionary concepts like fun meals and flame-broiling technology was merely a collective hallucination. A few franchise owners refused to convert, continuing to operate as independent Burger Chefs after Hardee's terminates their franchise agreements and withdraws all support. Some believe the brand retains genuine value in local markets where customer loyalty persists. Others refuse on principle, unwilling to surrender after investing decades and life savings. Others simply can't afford the conversion costs Hardee's demands. These independent holdouts survive longer than anyone expects. Through the 1980s as isolated anomalies in small towns, into the early 1990s as nostalgic curiosities that local media occasionally featured, serving customers in communities where the local Burger Chef has become a genuine institution transcending its commercial function, where the franchise owner knows regular customers by name, where the restaurant functions as informal gathering place. But economic reality and competitive pressure eventually defeat even the most determined resistance. Supply chains organized around supporting Burger Chef restaurants collapse as suppliers lose all other customers. The flame broilers fail mechanically, and parts become literally impossible to source. Brand recognition fades in markets without advertising support as years pass, and younger consumers grow up never having heard of Burger Chef. By 1996, 18 years after the murders, 15 years after the Hardee's acquisition, the last Burger Chef restaurant closes permanently. It's in Cookeville, Tennessee, a small town where Interstate 40 crosses the Cumberland Plateau. A loyal owner named Lawrence Jean, who refused to convert despite economic pressure and corporate threats, who kept the flame broilers running through improvisation and salvaged parts until maintaining them became literally impossible, who kept the peaked roof painted despite deteriorating structure until the building itself required repairs exceeding its value, who served the last Big Chef ever sold, the last fun meal ever packaged, to customers who probably didn't realize the historical significance. The last day isn't commemorated or celebrated or even documented. No local news coverage, no final celebration, no ceremony acknowledging that an entire brand's physical presence is ending after 42 years of operation. Just an ordinary Tuesday in March when Lawrence flips the sign from open to closed for the final time, locks the doors using keys he's carried for 20 years, walks to his car in the empty parking lot, and drives away from 2 decades of his life invested in a brand that no longer legally exists. The building stands empty for 2 years, gradually deteriorate. Vandals break windows to gain access, stealing whatever has resale value. Graffiti artists tag the walls with spray paint. Teenagers discover it makes an excellent location for unsupervised parties, leaving behind beer cans and cigarette butts and broken glass. And then, finally, in 1998, municipal authorities declare it a public nuisance, requiring demolition. Bulldozers arrive on a Wednesday morning in April and convert the entire structure to rubble in a single afternoon. The peaked roof, the architectural signature that once made Burger Chef instantly recognizable, the last one remaining anywhere in America, collapses inward with a groan of tortured metal and splintering wood. The orange paint that Lawrence lovingly maintained for years mixes with concrete dust and insulation and decades of accumulated cooking grease. The castle logo, the final physical instance of that emblem that once promised adventure to millions of children, is loaded into dump trucks and buried in a landfill outside Cookeville, where it will slowly decompose over decades. The castle appears for the third and final time here, in this landfill, not in the hands of a happy child unwrapping a fun meal, not advertising adventure and magic, but crushed under tons of municipal refuse and construction debris. Water-damaged cardboard slowly breaking down into component fibers through chemical and biological processes. Ink fading under the chemical assault of decomposition and moisture. The raised embossing that once felt so substantial under small fingers that seemed like it might last forever, gradually flattening under the literal weight of garbage. The promise broken and forgotten. The adventure cancelled by corporate decisions made in distant boardrooms. The kingdom destroyed not by dragons or external enemies or market forces, but by the specific choices of executives who valued quarterly dividends over long-term value creation. Today, in 2025, nearly 30 years after that last location closed, if you search for Burger Chef locations using mapping applications or business directories, you'll find parking lots where restaurants once stood. Strip malls erected on the same parcels that once hosted distinctive peaked roofs and orange buildings. Dollar stores and cell phone shops and nail salons occupying commercial spaces that once housed flame broilers and orange booths and families creating memories. The land has been completely repurposed, paved over, as if the restaurants never existed. In Indianapolis, the company's birthplace and longtime headquarters, there's no museum dedicated to preserving Burger Chef history or celebrating its innovations. No historical marker noting the location of the first restaurant. No monument honoring the brand that once employed thousands and fed millions and competed successfully against McDonald's in crucial markets. The corporate offices where Thomas and Wildman designed flame broilers and developed operational procedures and dreamed of building something permanent were demolished in 1994 to make room for a Walgreens pharmacy, the ultimate indignity of being replaced by exactly the kind of standardized corporate chain that represents everything Burger Chef opposed. What remains in 2025? Primarily, digital remnants, fragile archives dependent on continued human effort and platform stability. Websites created and maintained by enthusiasts who remember the brand fondly. Facebook groups where former employees now in their 50s and 60s and 70s share stories about working at Burger Chef, posting photographs of orange uniforms and employee badges, reminiscing about good managers and terrible customers, and the friendships formed during closing shifts. YouTube channels featuring old television commercials, painstakingly digitized from deteriorating VHS tapes by people who understand that once the physical media degrades, the content disappears forever unless someone acts to preserve it digitally. Reddit threads, where younger people stumble across Burger Chef references and ask, "Does anyone else remember this?" Receiving dozens of responses from older users testifying that yes, they remember vividly. They loved the Big Chef that tasted better than Big Macs. The fun meals were genuinely superior to Happy Meals. The flame-broiled flavor was noticeably better than McDonald's griddle-cooked burgers. But these digital memories are fragile in ways that physical artifacts aren't. Websites disappear overnight when domain renewals lapse. Facebook groups lose members steadily to death and platform abandonment. YouTube channels are deleted when creators lose motivation or die without transferring account access. The continued existence of Burger Chef's history depends entirely on the sustained voluntary efforts of people who receive nothing except the personal satisfaction of remembering, of refusing to let something they consider meaningful simply vanish from collective memory. In 2019, an urban explorer who specialized in documenting abandoned fast food locations posted a photograph that would circulate through Burger Chef enthusiast networks for years. The image showed a collapsed building in rural Missouri. The peaked roof had partially caved from weather damage and time. The orange paint had faded to brownish rust. Windows were broken or missing. The parking lot had surrendered to weeds and young trees pushing through cracks. And there, barely visible through the wreckage, partially buried under accumulated trash and animal nests, lay a single fun meal box, water-damaged almost beyond recognition, covered in dust and mold. The cardboard should have biodegraded decades ago, but had somehow survived through the accident of the building's partial protection from rain. The castle logo was still faintly visible when you enhanced the photograph digitally, the raised embossing still barely perceptible even after 20-plus years of exposure. The explorer photographed the box from multiple angles, documenting this accidental time capsule, this improbable fragment of a dead brand surviving against all reasonable probability. The photographs were posted to social media with captions asking if anyone knew what this was. The responses came in hundreds, former Burger Chef employees recognizing the logo instantly and flooding the comments with memories, former customers recalling the specific excitement of fun meals, nostalgic adults who remembered when that castle represented magic rather than decay, younger people who'd never heard of Burger Chef asking questions and receiving enthusiastic detailed responses from older users grateful that someone wanted to know. One comment, posted by someone who identified themselves as a former assistant manager who'd worked at 3 different Burger Chef locations between 1974 and 1982, said simply, "We tried our best. It wasn't enough." That brief epitaph captures Burger Chef's entire arc more effectively than any business school case study possibly could. A company that tried hard, that innovated genuinely, that served millions of customers who genuinely appreciated what they provided, that employed thousands of people who took pride in their work despite minimum wages and difficult conditions, that meant something substantial to the communities it inhabited, that created real value and genuine joy, and authentic gathering places, that pioneered concepts competitors would later adopt and profit from enormously, that understood customers and families in ways that should have translated into sustained competitive advantage. And then, because of strategic decisions made in distant boardrooms by executives who never visited restaurants or talked to customers or understood what they actually owned, because of financial models prioritizing quarterly dividend extraction over long-term value creation, because short-term thinking always feels rational until you see the long-term consequences, the entire enterprise disappeared. December 24, 1971. The smell of flame-broiled beef and warm sesame buns. Children clutching castle-emblazoned boxes promising adventure. A company beating McDonald's in crucial markets, a future that seemed infinite. And in a boardroom 300 miles away, a clock already counting down to inevitable extinction, not through market failure, but through corporate extraction, masquerading as professional management. This is what remains: dust and photographs and digital archives and fragmentary memories, and the recognition that Burger Chef's tragedy wasn't inevitable or unavoidable, but was deliberately chosen through thousands of specific decisions by people who valued quarterly earnings over sustainable value creation, who treated a living business as a financial asset to be harvested rather than nurtured, who never understood what they were systematically destroying until nothing remained except regrets.